It's now time to make our picks for Week 5 in the CFL, JC. Let's go. The Toronto Argonauts are 3-point favorites over the Saskatchewan Roughriders at Mosaic Stadium on Thursday night. The Boatmen are coming off a disappointing home loss to the Montreal Alouettes, while Shea Patterson will make his first career CFL start as Trevor Harris is out due to an MCL sprain. JC, can the Argos cover the spread on the road, or will the Riders surprise them with Patterson at the helm?
I know that the Argos struggled a little bit last week against the Montreal Alouettes, who are the top team in the CFL right now, and maybe a little bit of the shine came off of Cameron Dukes in the process. But I can't believe that the spread is this tight when the Argos have been one of the most talented teams in the CFL, and Saskatchewan is fielding a completely unproven quarterback. I've made my thoughts on Shea Patterson known on this podcast. I don't think he's going to be any good at the helm. He certainly needs to have a much better performance than he did when he came off the bench in week 3. I don't think he gets it, and I think this Riders team gets overwhelmed by the Argonauts at home. I'm taking Toronto, and I'd take them up to over a touchdown.
Yeah, I think the line is a credit to just how much of a tough place to play Mosaic Stadium is, right? I know attendance was disappointing for the club's home opener, but one would think with the team at 3-0, there's going to be a little bit more fervor in that building. I know it doesn't fill up great on Thursday nights. I would imagine the Saskatchewan Roughriders would have been much happier with a Friday game or a Saturday game, because I know they draw a lot of fans from outside the city limits of Regina who maybe have a difficult time getting to the facility on a Thursday night. But that being said, I am all over the Argonauts in this one still. They are starting to get a little bit healthier. They are still banged up along the defensive line with Falar and Rimolade out. They missed him, I thought, quite badly last week. They also lost Quincy Moget at strong side linebacker. They've got Robert Priester coming in and starting there. Well, they just signed him a couple of days ago. Yes, he played on the team last year, but having a guy go from the street to the starting lineup is a little bit of a question mark. That being said, I did not see anywhere near enough from Shea Patterson to believe in him enough for this week that he can beat a good team. And the Argonauts are a good team. If I am the Argos, I am stacking that line of scrimmage, completely taking A.J. Ouellette away and forcing Shea Patterson to beat me with his arm. I'm not sure he can do it. He has a chance to become a folk hero in Regina if he does. But right now, I got to take the tried and true. I'm going to the Toronto Argonauts over the Saskatchewan Roughriders and covering that field goal spread. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 3-point home favorites against the Ottawa Redblacks on Friday night, despite being off to an 0-4 start. Zach Collaros missed practice on Tuesday, while the Redblacks are coming off a walk-off home win against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. JC, can Winnipeg get win number 1 and cover this short spread?
I keep going back and forth on this matchup because obviously the Redblacks beat them in the first time around. The Bombers have not looked like themselves, and there's all these injury questions. We know about the hit they've taken in the receiving core, but Zach Collaros not being on the field over the last number of years, if we had heard that, it would have been press the panic button because he was so important to this team. Now, I'm wondering just how important he really is. He has not been good for the first part of the season, and as you've so wonderfully pointed out in your post-game columns, Hodge, he's locked in on specific receivers, has not spread the ball around. Chris Streveler did do that. As much as I am not thrilled with his ability as a passer, he did spread the ball around, and he adds an element with his legs that I think the Redblacks might have some difficulty defending. I think even if Streveler is the guy, the Bombers get their first victory here, although I am not confident enough in that assessment not to take the Redblacks to cover. I know it's a short spread, but I want to hedge my bets here.
That's fair, and I'm going to not hedge my bets here, and then I'll probably regret it next week because I am taking Winnipeg to win and cover here. Princess Auto Stadium is a tough place to play. Yes, I picked the BC Lions when the Lions came to town a couple weeks ago, and yes, the Lions covered a very short spread, but I don't think the Redblacks are on the BC Lions level. And as much as, yes, this Winnipeg team will miss Zach Collaros if, in fact, he does not play, we don't know that, again, as of the recording of this show. I thought that Chris Streveler brought some much-needed energy and some life into that offense. Last week and a half of work, Zach Collaros only threw 12 passes, and 7 were to Nick Dembski. 2 were to Drew Olatarski, and a couple were dump-offs to running backs and fullbacks. All of a sudden, Chris Streveler comes in the game, and look, Josh Johnson is there. Look, Ontario Wilson, like guys who I'm not even sure Zach Collaros knows exist at this point, are not only getting the ball thrown to them, but they're catching it and making plays. One of the most electric plays of the week, I thought, was Ontario Wilson in overtime, catching a pass at the sidelines. Looked like he was going to be knocked out for like a pretty modest gain. And yet in a phone booth, he made a couple of defenders miss and got down for 19 yards down the sideline to set up what would have been a short field goal had Winnipeg not turned the ball over. Point is, I'm bullish on what Chris Streveler can do in this offense. No, I don't think that he's an elite downfield passer, but I think he brings an interesting dimension, and I'm encouraged by the way he was able to distribute the football, something that Zach Collaros has been completely unable to do through 4 games this season. So I will take the Bombers. The Montreal Alouettes are massive home favorites, massive, JC, over the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday evening at Percival Molson Stadium, currently sitting at 9.5 points, almost double digits. The Owls are off to a 4-0 start, having just beaten down the Toronto Argonauts, while the Stamps needed overtime to knock off the winless Blue Bombers. JC, you've been burned taking the points a few times this season. Can Montreal cover this wide spread?
Well, we were delaying a little bit taping the podcast today, so I didn't have a chance to have breakfast or even have lunch, so I'm hungry. I'm hungry right now. My tummy, it's growling, and I want to eat all these points because the Montreal Alouettes have been by far the best team in the CFL right now. Their defense is dominant, and their offense has been a very, very pleasant surprise with the development of guys like Tyson Philpott in year 3 becoming legitimate top receivers in this league. Obviously, Calgary has Jalen, the twin brother, on the other side, who hasn't quite crested that hill yet. But I just don't see the Stampeders being able to keep up with the Alouettes' firepower. They're a solid team. They're a run-of-the-mill team. They're an average team. The Montreal Alouettes are a spectacular team, and I'm taking them to cover the 9.5-point spread.
Yeah, I didn't take Montreal to cover last week because I don't see them as a big explosive team. I see them as a dominant defensive team that plays really well on specials and is opportune on offense. Now, a couple of those opportune moments resulted in big points for that team last week. The Cole Speaker touchdown, the trick play on 3rd and short from Caleb Evans was sensational. I unfortunately am going to repeat that here. I am going to take the Calgary Stampeders to cover, but the Alouettes to win. I have already had lunch, JC. I'm a couple hours east of you, so I am not hungry as of the recording of this show. I am going to take the Montreal Alouettes to win, but I do think the Calgary Stampeders can cover. Even if it's in garbage time, even if it's Jake Mayer adding a touchdown late in this game while the Montreal Alouettes are playing off, I think that the Stamps can keep it close. I like how the Stamps are committed to the run. I like Calgary's defense. I thought they did a great job of shutting down Brady Oliveira. Not that the Alouettes look to run the ball a whole heck of a lot, but I think that the Stampeders are built to play close physical football, and so I think that they can go into Percival Molson and keep this one close, even if they're not necessarily going to win. The BC Lions are 5.5-point road favorites when they visit the winless Tiger Cats on Sunday at Tim Hortons Field. The Leos have won 3 straight games and will be well rested for this one, while the Tabbies lost on a last-second field goal in Ottawa last week. JC, can BC extend their winning streak and cover this wide spread?
We all know that Tim Hortons Field is a difficult place to play because of that fan base, but BC has that 10 days of rest that they're coming off of, and I think that's going to be critical because this is a team that is by far the best in terms of producing yards on offense right now. They've got the best quarterback in the league right now in Vernon Adams Jr. They've got weapons all over the board offensively, but it hasn't necessarily translated to points, right? They're middle of the pack in terms of scoring, and they've struggled to get majors in the red zone. Well, they come up against a Ticats team here that has allowed the most points of anyone in the CFL thus far this season. It could not come at a better time for the BC Lions, coming off a long break where they can tweak that offense and get them scoring again. I think they are going to have a little bit of an explosion here on the road and cover the 5.5-point spread.
I am with you, JC. I just said that the Montreal Alouettes are not a team built to blow out opponents. The BC Lions are, right? They love to throw the ball. Vernon Adams Jr. has played at an exceptionally high level so far this season. I think that this team is, especially with the Ticats being battered, being bruised, I think that BC, coming off, again, a very long week with lots of rest, is in great position to go in and take advantage of a Hamilton Tiger Cats defense that has struggled. I'm excited for Tim White, right, that he got going this past week in a loss to the Ottawa Redblacks. The Ticats will need Tim White to be at the top of his game to get their first win of the season, if, dare say, they do manage to knock off the BC Lions here. But I like Vancouver's chances here of going into Steeltown and getting a win, not only just in the standings, but I think getting a win by enough to cover this spread. I would be happy taking BC to win and cover up to a touchdown in this one. If you can win at Princess Auto Stadium, which the Lions recently did, you can certainly win at Tim Hortons Field. Give me the Lions and the points.